Lord of Mysteries, Survival from the Secret Doll by author Atmorn. Chapter 392-398. Landing on the now calm, dim yellow sea, Tang Weiwei lowered his head, his gaze sweeping over the buildings beneath the seabed. It's a phantom of the Giant King's court's architecture. War god Bardahair's predecessor was Giant King Ulmir's eldest son, the god of dawn. Only after the Giant King's fall did he advance to Sequence 0 Dusk Giant. It was not surprising to see a phantom of the East Continent's Giant King's court here. After all, that was the homeland of all giants, and the ordinary people of the Fursak Empire, who appeared tall and burly, actually inherited some giant bloodline, though relatively little, not enough to become half a Beander due to the inheritance of Beander characteristics. What piqued a little interest was the residual mental will of Giant King Ulmir beneath the Dusk Sea. Actually, I've always been curious, the Sequence 0 of the warrior sequence was occupied by Ulmir a long time ago. Although you are his eldest son, given the chaotic situation of the Second Epoch, Ulmir shouldn't have missed the opportunity to resurrect. He stared at war god Bardahair, who had already fallen into chaos due to the reverse contamination of his anchor. Clearly, Bardahair could no longer answer his question. Contaminating the corresponding deity through anchor contamination was not easy for other sequences, but for Lord of the Mysteries, it was quite simple. Whether it was stealing anchors, grafting anchors, or causing errors in the stability produced by anchors, these were all areas Lord of the Mysteries excelled at. Therefore, when Bardahair faced Tang, who had already prepared and could stabilize himself without too many anchors, defeat was the only outcome. However, a typical cryptic servant wouldn't dare to do this. If a marionette were to convert on such a large scale, the cryptic servant would have gone mad long ago. Then, Tang Weiwei tilted his head slightly, as if listening to something. North Continent, Fursak Empire's capital, St. Malone. When Ahomatova Einhorn, the Einhorn family's angel, arrived at the Dusk Great Hall, he couldn't help but gasp at the sight before him. Every Beander in the Dusk Great Hall wore a black silk top hat. They were either conversing or writing, looking harmonious and showing no sign of panic that should have been present after their lord encountered problems. What this meant was self-evident. Mr. Flammel. Hearing Ahomatova Einhorn's voice, one of the demigods turned and smiled at him. Good morning, Mr. Einhorn, today is truly a good day. Truly a good day. Ahomatova did not agree with this, but he had already anticipated Nicola Flammel's sudden appearance here, and the fact that the patriarchs and bishops of the Dusk Great Hall were all controlled. The Black Knight Goddess and Miskatonic's actions against Fursak and the Church of the God of War in recent years had been almost unconcealed. With a true god and several angel kings assisting the Black Knight Church, and with deities entering the starry sky and not easily interfering with the real world's trajectory, the Church of the God of War's defeat was an inevitable outcome. The high-ranking officials of the Fursak Empire had more or less already considered this. It was too fast. Larian ran away. Nicola smiled, shrugging helplessly. He is a Sequence 2 angel, not that easy to parasitize. It's truly regrettable, wouldn't you say? Looking at Nicola's ambiguous smile, a drop of cold sweat ran down Ahomatova's forehead. He could only force a smile. A Sequence 2 weather warlock against a Sequence 1 time worm. Although this was his territory, and he had his army here, he might not be able to display a level not inferior to Sequence 1 here. But there was a conqueror in Miskatonic. High Sequence Beyonders of the same sequence could always suppress lower Sequence Beyonders of the same sequence. This was an almost insurmountable chasm. Furthermore, was the person in front of him the true body of Nicola Flammel? This was an old angel king, he had no chance of winning. He didn't even know where Nicola Flammel's true body was hidden, what he was doing, or how many of his clones were here. War God, he. After a moment of consideration, Ahomatova cautiously asked, does Fursak's faith need to change next? No need, you can maintain the status quo. I will inform you of future matters. The parasitized demigod adjusted his hat, then walked away with a smile, leaving Ahomatova standing alone in place, silent for a long time. After a long while, he finally let out a soft sigh, looking with complex emotions at the sun that had already risen brightly in the distance. He was considering whether the Einhorn family needed to pledge allegiance to Miskatonic. The centuries of confrontation had already severely weakened Forsac. The War of Betrayal and the ceding of territory and payment of indemnities during the 20 Years' War had already depleted most of Forsac's old reserves accumulated during the Tudor Truncest United Empire era. Now, the war god was about to fall. Changes in faith can sometimes be very long, and sometimes they can happen in an instant. The faith of high-ranking individuals can help deities stabilize their anchors, but many of my marionettes are also at high sequences. Starry sky. Standing before the dark blue door, Tang reached out and once again grasped Bardahair's spirit-body thread. I know you have a resurrection plan on Larian. Well, that's right, against me and the goddess, you probably don't have much chance of winning. Ah, Lala, what are you hoping for? As the marionettization process progressed, Tang began to control the deity's spirit body. For a high-sequence marionettist, the marionettization process can also be directly equivalent to the spiritualism process. Are you hoping for the Earth Mother's help? He read the corresponding thoughts directly from the spirit. Bardahair's body grew increasingly stiff. This was not just joint stiffness, but the despair of a spirit body being manipulated by another, about to be hung in midair, unable to exert any force. Upon hearing the name Earth Mother, Bardahair, with his last remaining strength from the contamination of his anchor, desperately connected with another deity through the bloodline link. Earth Mother Queen Ombella. Be alert, Mother. In a trance, Bardahair saw a world full of lush green colors. He saw his mother holding a baby, and saw his mother looking at him. But why was the sky in this world red? The marionettization process was very fast, even exceeding Tang's expectations. With the birth of a Sequence 0-level marionette, deep blackness surged out from the dark blue light door behind Tang. Deep sleep flowers and night-fragrant grass poured out from the light door, and a hint of darkness that should not exist in the world of dusk was added. The war god, following his preordained fate, became a marionette. 393 possibilities. In the astral world, the burst of dim yellow light quickly retracted back into Bardahair's divine kingdom, causing the abnormal sky over the north and south continent to return to normal. Some people noticed something, while others remained oblivious. Astronomers quickly published their professional opinions, simply believing it to be a rare astronomical phenomenon. Members of the various churches and secret orders more or less detected an anomaly, but the astral world was so distant, a realm belonging to the lofty gods, not easily touched by mortals. The royal families of the Forsac Empire reached a consensus, tacitly concealing the series of issues that had occurred within the Church of the God of War. The high-ranking members of the Church of the God of War, those bishops loyal to Bardahair, who discovered any anomaly, all donned black silk top hats, their souls twisted into Nicola's appearance, and similarly, tacitly concealed the fact that their god had become a marionette. Next was the recovery of sealed artifacts, notifying Miskatonic to quietly take over the Church of the God of War and establish a branch school there. This way, Miskatonic's influence would be present in all the North Continent nations, and investigators would find it much more convenient when traveling. Within Bardahair's divine kingdom, a lady in a black classical long dress emerged from the light door. She brought silence and tranquility. Night-scented grass and deep-sleep flowers grew and spread across the dim yellow ocean. Bardahair's massive body began to shrink, and the marionette Ized god stood beside Tang with a vacant expression, showing no emotions or thoughts of his own towards the Black Night goddess who had entered his divine kingdom. The Black Night goddess looked at her old acquaintance, her voice also carrying the power of peace and silence, and said to Tang, "Larian carries Bardahair's spiritual imprint. How do you plan to handle it? Let it cool down." Tang shrugged. Ultimately, it's just a struggle between sequence pathways. For the sake of completing the eternal dark, Bardahair's sacrifice was an inevitable outcome. Although, according to the saying from my hometown, if you don't cut the grass by the roots, it will grow back with the spring breeze. But it's fine to let this resurrection contingency go. At that time, he He could just control him and hang him up as a marionette, selectively allowing Bardahair to revive at the appropriate time and place. Larian was just a small fry, no need to take him so seriously. After all, without the support of the uniqueness and sequence 1 Beander characteristics, Bardahair's revival wouldn't cause any significant waves. The Black Knight Goddess nodded, then looked at Bardahair. I need some time to first accommodate a portion of the River of Eternal Darkness's authority, and then to accommodate the uniqueness and 1 Beander characteristic of the Death Pathway and the Warrior sequence. This was a relatively conservative process for becoming an Old One, allowing her to avoid the Creator's spiritual imprint's resurgence to the greatest extent possible, helping her retain more of her humanity and become an Old One. However, in contrast, this was a lengthy process. If the Beander characteristics and uniqueness from the Death God and the God of War hadn't been retrieved in advance, the Black Knight Goddess would have had to take risks to achieve the goal of quickly becoming the Eternal Dark. Tang nodded noncommittally. Okay, we'll proceed as planned. But I'm very curious about one thing. What? The Black Knight Goddess looked at Tang. Tang mused, you said, since the original god put some ingredients into the 2 disaster sequence pathways, would he also put some ingredients into the 3 eternal sequence pathways? Although doing so would most likely make him the starting point for the entire world to return to its origin and then split again. He paused at this point, then continued. But there is indeed that possibility. The Black Knight Goddess was silent for a moment before speaking. I cannot guarantee whether the original god has done similar things. After all, his existence is a height we cannot temporarily reach. No one could guarantee how many contingency plans these pillars had. Tang was not a Beander of the 3 eternal sequence pathways. If he were, he might be able to suppress the god's revival with his uniqueness, but now the position of Lord of the Mysteries was more important, and the god's matter could only be postponed. Well, he regretted not being an octopus, unable to deal with the celestial venerable and then the god. Tang nodded, then reached out and rummaged through Bardahair. After 2 attempts, a Beander characteristic corresponding to the Warrior sequence 1 god's hand fell into his hand. Tang once again bestowed the Beander power of an observer upon his new marionette, reverting to the state of fully possessing 3 sequence 1 potions through self-observation. After handing the Beander characteristic to the goddess, he looked down at the Twilight Sea. A greenish-black light door opened beneath his feet, connecting to the underworld deep within the spirit world. An egg rolled out from the depths of the underworld. As soon as the bird egg touched the Twilight Sea, it sank to the bottom, merging with the illusory palace of the underground giant king's court. Something was struggling inside, but with the sound of a snap, the egg quieted down again. The fallen mother goddess is very eager to master the power of the cycle of death and rebirth. For now, let this thing stay here. It just so happens that Ormir and Grigali are also old acquaintances. The underworld held Grigali's corpse and a bird egg whose purpose was unknown. Both were difficult to deal with. It felt wasteful to sink them into the river of eternal darkness, useless to eat, and a pity to discard. Let me think, why don't I put something in this thing sometime and send it to the mother goddess? It would be very interesting when the mother goddess excitedly cracks open the bird egg, ready for dinner, only to find that the contents of the bird egg have long since rotted and gone sour. The Black Knight Goddess looked at Tang in thought and silently turned her head away. Beyond the astral world, those Old One rulers do not want the Lord of the Mysteries to be born. Tang, you need to speed up. Yes, I know. The greenish-black light door opened once again, and Tang retreated from the God of War's divine kingdom, returning to the Black Knight Goddess's Dark Heaven Kingdom. In a tranquil garden deep within the Dark Heaven Kingdom, he reached out and pulled out the Black Knight Goddess's history void image from the historical mist, then transformed it into his marionette, installing the pre-copied, bionic automaton module to respond to her honorific name and bestow divine oracles upon the Black Knight Church on behalf of the Black Knight Goddess. The Black Knight Goddess needed to quickly accommodate the uniqueness, Beander characteristics, and source material for a period, and would not have more energy for these matters. But it didn't matter. True gods generally couldn't defeat him, and outer gods basically couldn't enter. As long as he played it safe, this marionette could pretend to be the goddess until the very end without any problems. This way, the conditions for the eternal dark are almost met. Next are the 5 all-knowing and all-powerful sequence pathways. Biting his quill, Tang glanced at the sky of the Dark Heaven Kingdom. Adorned with night, sparkling with stars, it was a scenery that words could not describe. I just don't know what will be left in the end. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. And please support the author by link in description. 394 Revival. The tranquility of the night and the power of dusk equally enveloped Backland. Even though it was fleeting, it still woke Klein, who hadn't slept soundly that night. Walking out of the bedroom and standing by the living room window, looking at the sky, a strange feeling filled Klein's heart. The dusk completely obscured the entire red moon and starlight, then that dusk rapidly receded and disappeared. Tang, without him noticing, had walked to his side. What's wrong? Tang looked up at the sky, then turned his gaze to Klein. Klein frowned, carefully sensing his own state. Tonight feels a bit strange. He looked at Tang and asked, puzzled, I always feel that members of the Rose School aren't that easy to deal with. Tonight, a demigod and 3 mid-sequence beyonders from the hedonist faction of the Rose School were eliminated by Miskatonic and members of the restraint faction of the Rose School. A sealed artifact, very important to the Rose School, was recovered. This process also allowed Klein to digest most of his magician Beyander characteristic. He only needed a little more time, and even without actively role-playing, he could attempt to advance to Faceless of Sequence 6. And the digestion of the Beyander characteristic also represented an improvement in Klein's own spirituality. With the bonus from the mystic space above the gray mist, even without the corresponding understanding of the concept of dusk, Klein keenly and vaguely sensed the anomalies in the spirit world, the astral world, and those outer gods. After all, the symbolic meaning of the great existence above the spirit world and the mystic ruler above the gray mist had been established from the very beginning. Of course, these were still indecipherable concepts, and subconscious interpretations made without supplementary prior knowledge were not accurate. The Rose School, huh? Tang nodded and said, we still have no news of the leader of the hedonist faction of the Rose School. The evil god they worship is quite terrifying. Indeed, a demigod and members of the hedonist faction can't endure much. This sequence that primarily uses curses and malice as its power has always possessed some mysticism knowledge that we don't know about. As for the Desire Mother Tree, it's not impossible for her to give birth to that demigod again. Moreover, the fallen Mother Goddess has already focused her attention on him. Although this is just a history-void image, the fallen Mother Goddess might not refrain from having her strange believers and families act against him. Tang, who had obtained a true god marionette, also pondered for a moment, thinking that there might be a way to utilize this matter. The honored celestial of the primordial beginning might even cooperate with the Mother Goddess. My marionettist potion is also almost fully digested. Next, I need to prepare for the trickster advancement ritual. That fast? Klein was surprised. Tang smiled slightly and said, the acting method, to a certain extent, has a hidden rule of pre-acting. As long as I obtain the corresponding sealed artifact and pre-act as a marionettist, my digestion progress will be much faster than other marionettists. So, if I dedicate myself to acting as Sherlock Moriarty, my faceless potion will also be digested quickly. Klein's ability to infer was quick. Tang nodded in agreement. After you advance to Faceless, you'll need to go out to sea. Although Ting'an City has places suitable for the marionettist advancement and venues for the corresponding rituals, I think you'd prefer to see the outside world. At this point, Tang paused. This is also what that person means. Mr. Flammel did not wish for Klein to always live under his wing. Klein understood this point and nodded. I understand. The next day, in the early morning, when Tang came out of his room, Klein had already left. He had greeted Isinger Stanton, planning to continue investigating the serial killer case this morning. Once it was realized that the serial killer might be an animal, the problem would quickly be resolved. The speed of resolution depended on how that demon dog, which had already become a marionette, would react and consciously evade the pursuit of the Night Watchers, Punishers, Mechanical Heart, and those great detectives, as well as his strange marionette. That marionette. Tang narrowed his eyes, feeling his spirit-body thread. The reaction from the other end of the spirit-body thread indicated that the marionette was still under his control, but that strange feeling had not dissipated with time. Instead, it was becoming increasingly bizarre. You say, what's the probability of the honored celestial of the primordial beginning reviving in a marionette equipped with a bionic automaton module? He rubbed his chin and conversed with his system. Big data calculation, the probability is far less than 0.01%. The marionette itself does not possess the basic conditions for the honored celestial of the primordial beginning to revive, host. The revival of the honored celestial of the primordial beginning could only happen in a high-sequence meander. This was a fundamental rule that was almost impossible to tamper with or break, even for the honored celestial of the primordial beginning, who excelled at fooling, manipulating, and tampering. Yes, Tang agreed with the system's view. Host, do you have something else to say? The system, having been roasted for so many years, had more or less upgraded its mainframe and improved its intelligence a bit. You say, is the rebirth of the fallen mother goddess also quite useful to the honored celestial of the primordial beginning? Tang looked at the blue sky above and said to the system. Breaking fundamental rules, something a pillar that hasn't returned cannot do, doesn't mean an existing pillar cannot. Compared to the birth of a new lord of the mysteries, the fallen mother goddess might not prefer the old one to return. Especially when the new one might not be easier to deal with than the old one. At this moment, on the East Continent, in Silver City, Nicola walked down the street, passing Derek Berg. He turned his head, looked at the round tower not far away, then looked at a figure below the round tower who suddenly looked up and pinched his monocle. He said nothing, maintaining his pace, strolling through Silver City as if taking a leisurely walk. Lightning flashed across the sky from time to time, and a huge shadow had, at some unknown point, enveloped this city that had survived for 1,000 years on the East Continent. Nicola, wearing a black silk top hat and a matching tailcoat, magically produced a tarot card from his hand. The Hanged Man. The shadows shifted. Not far away, Elder Luvia, one of the members of the 6-person council, turned her head to look at the vacant area there. Her light gray eyes moved slightly. Luvia seemed to hear something, and her expression grew calmer. Praise be to you, the creator of all, the omniscient and omnipotent God. 395 Faceless. Last night, the fleeting twilight glow quickly vanished into the streets and alleys. Apart from the nobles and capitalists, the people of Backland were all busy with their own lives, having neither the time nor the ability to worry about impractical matters. Currently, Klein had almost completely digested the magician potion of Sequence 7, and the process of advancing to Sequence 6 was already on the agenda. Backland had fallen into a strange equilibrium for a long time after the burst of dim yellow light. The serial killer demon dog, which had been identified as an animal, was quickly defeated under the encirclement of the Black Knight Church and other Orthodox churches. The Miskatonic investigators, however, discovered a more crucial link. For the few investigators who knew the truth, including Klein and Tang, the possibility of a Sequence 5 demon behind the serial killer was not particularly surprising. I just don't know what that demon truly wants to do. The Miskatonic high level in Backland, namely Acherly, still focused her attention on the true creator's divine child who had escaped from Tingen City. After all, a Sequence 5 demon, even if he advanced to a Sequence 4 devil, would hardly attract the attention of a powerhouse of her caliber. Klein could only secretly heighten his vigilance, preparing to confront the monsters lurking in the shadows. As October drew to a close, Klein finally completed the digestion of his magician potion. The embodiment of all incorrect errors, fallacies, and loopholes, guiding the hour hand of fate. After a prayer, Klein, who sought Flammel to crush the extraordinary characteristics before him, quickly obtained a pure main ingredient for the Seer Pathways Sequence 6 potion. Auxiliary materials. Tang handed the auxiliary materials to Klein, watching him add the main potion ingredient and auxiliary materials into the bottle in the predetermined order for the reaction. Klein quickly prepared the corresponding potion. Looking at the Sequence 6 potion before him, he took a firm gulp. A very strange sensation surged from within his body, a feeling as if his entire being was dissolving, on the verge of losing control, which made Klein's mind highly concentrated. I can't go on like this, Klein knew this well. He began to meditate, stabilizing his mind, and then he heard a voice. Honachus, Fregla, Honachus, Fregla. Lord of the Mysteries, Mystic, Heavenly Venerate. Floating Life Profound Yellow Heavenly Venerate. Blessed Life Profound Yellow Heavenly Monarch. Tang, who was watching Klein advance to Faceless, expressionlessly looked into the depths of the spirit world, which was completely superimposed on the real world. Above the ethereal dome of the spirit world, lay the mysterious space of the gray mist. In Source Castle, Mr. Error also raised his hand expressionlessly, actively creating a corresponding error. Grayish-white mist surged from Tang, but it was quickly affected by the authority of the cryptic servant and the Supreme Being, causing an error, a reversal, and a misdirection, leading the Source Castle binder, Klein Moretti, towards Tang Eggers. I knew the boss wouldn't obediently let me be nailed into the coffin. Klein, who only retained the aura of Source Castle, was still in the process of advancing to Faceless. As long as he didn't advance to the Sequence 1 cryptic servant level, the Heavenly Venerate's influence on him wouldn't be that great. But if he reached Sequence 1, it might be different, that marionette. Tang looked up at the window, which was covered by curtains, and slowly said, after she killed that demon dog, what was her reaction? A soft and quick female voice replied, no reaction at all. She has not escaped your control. Is that so? Seriously, the Lord of the Mysteries is so troublesome. He wanted to flip the table. Rubbing his temples, Klein had by now completed the Faceless advancement ritual. Tang looked at Klein, his expression quickly becoming gentle and relieved, as if the previous anomaly had never occurred. As the strongest Faceless currently, his acting talent had always been excellent. As someone who has been through it, I must remind you, Klein. A Faceless can become anyone, but you can only be yourself. This is a common acting principle that runs through the high sequences of the Seer pathway. Whether it's a Faceless, a marionettist, a trickster, an ancient scholar, or a miracle worker and a cryptic servant, in fooling others, obscuring history, and playing with time, one must always be oneself. As two detectives in Backland, aside from the tasks belonging to the Black Knight Church and Miskatonic investigators, Klein and Tang had quite ample time. While Klein was wandering through the streets and alleys, thoroughly familiarizing himself with the extraordinary abilities of a Faceless, he met Old Kohler and the Liv family in the East District. At the same time, in the Forsaken Land of the Gods, in Silver City. In the prison beneath the Twin Towers, Nicola walked through, stopping before a cell deep within the prison. As he walked, both the sealed artifacts and the guards here were in a normal state. They could neither sense the anomaly here nor were they aware that Udall, who had been imprisoned in the deep cell for nearly 42 years, was now leisurely wearing a crystal monocle, conversing with Nicola. I thought you would keep manipulating that child until he ascended to godhood. In fact, we have always been doing so, all of this is fate. Eamon interrupted Nicola's words, which were almost equivalent to meme pollution, with a smile at the corner of his mouth. Don't say such things anymore. You should know that I have twisted all connections between my avatars. This kind of pollution cannot find my main body. Nicola paused, then shook his head with regret. Well, it certainly seems that way. The mental pollution of a Supreme Being pathway sequence 1, fate, is not merely about destiny. Even in speech, as long as there are signs of repetition several times, the authority of the Supreme Being will manifest to a certain extent. The greatness of the Old One's dominance is not merely superficial power, the immense power of that existence lies in the erosion of fate, the constancy of the future, and the control of dimensions. And the manipulation of marionettes, this sentence is not only mental pollution for others, but also for the person who says it, for the marionette who says it, for the spirit worm, and for the systems, bionic automaton, module. Nicola and several other angel-level marionettes were aware of this, but they couldn't and wouldn't resist this erosion. But others couldn't, such as Amon. Sometimes he would also say a few words with a mischievous nature, but his main body never revealed itself to any marionette or Tang. Even though they were currently in a cooperative relationship, Tang preferred the Amon who was hung up over the Amon with normal thinking. Who would like an unpredictable troublemaker? 396 feet lie. The recent exploration team from Silver City discovered a temple dedicated to the true creator's idol. To avoid any connection with the fallen creator, Derek Berg, a member of the Tarot Club, followed the Hanged Man's suggestion and feigned losing control, entering the prison beneath the Twin Towers. This was to avoid a dangerous further exploration. Whether by accident or fate, he was placed next to an Amon parasite. Looking at the sun, Derek, beside him, Amon thoughtfully scanned Nicola, who sat in the corner of his cell, seemingly ready to monitor him. You say, if I enter the Source Castle, is there any possibility of changing the protagonist of that fellow's plan? If you mean to accept the Supreme Being's grace, I think he would consider it. A prankster is annoying, but a prankster clearly being manipulated is different. The relationship between the benefactor and the beneficiary was clearly a satisfactory outcome for Tang, not this kind of immediate, hostile relationship where they were ready to kill each other's main body upon meeting. Although, in essence, Amon, now only a sequence 2, could no longer significantly influence the clearly dominant Tang. Amon's smile widened slightly, and he shrugged helplessly, never mind. Nicola's expression remained unchanged, his gaze deep and dark. He looked at Derek Berg in the adjacent cell and said nothing more. He did not interfere with the connection between Amon and Derek. He, like Amon, was merely a clone. And Nicola, who possessed the uniqueness of his sequence, could at any time forcefully intervene using the Source Castle if Amon tried to do something he didn't know about. I have a mission. In a room under the Scarlet Moon, Klein was lighting a lamp and reading late into the night. The Miskatonic library contained many books he still needed to study. During his time in Backland, aside from acting as a competent detective, Klein mostly spent his time learning relevant, missing mysticism knowledge. Klein, who had already received a spiritual warning, quickly reacted to Flammel's voice, which suddenly echoed in his mind. What is it? He was a little curious. Before that, you can take this first. After Nicola's voice faded, a card suddenly appeared in the reflection of the window in front of him. The Black Emperor card emerged in the mirror, then appeared in the real world, landing on the table in front of Klein. Blasphemy Slate. He was a little surprised, then filled with questions. Recently, multiple kidnapping incidents have occurred in Backland, involving a power struggle between Backland's high-ranking officials and the major churches. I know what you're thinking, Klein. You can ponder this question yourself. For me to tell you the answer might not be a good thing. Klein's mouth twitched slightly, about to ask a question. All right, you're the boss. Go investigate a man named Capon. He is linked to the human trafficking cases. It's fine to deduce more things from this, or to do other things. At this point, Mr. Flammel's voice paused for a moment, then continued. You're on your own. Just me. Klein was puzzled for a moment, but quickly relaxed. He looked at the blasphemy slate in front of him and asked cautiously. Then this blasphemy slate is. It will be useful. After saying this, Mr. Flammel's voice disappeared. Klein waited a few seconds, then picked up the Black Emperor card with a strange expression. He said to let me go alone, and this thing will be useful. Thinking of something, Klein glanced at his room door, confirmed that Tang and his marionette were not there, then got up and took the card into the washroom. Through a ritual, he sent the card to the mysterious space above the gray mist, and he himself entered it, exploring the card's effect. Soon, he experimented with the spiritual changes that occurred after integrating the card into his body. It really is useful. Indeed, Mr. Flammel knew about this mysterious space above the gray mist. In fact, His understanding of this mysterious space might be much deeper than he thought. Where exactly is this place? And what connection does it have to his transmigration? On the day the Tarot Club ended, upon hearing the prayer from the sun, Derek Berg, Klein witnessed an extremely horrifying scene. Long time no see. Seemingly noticing something, Eamon, behind Derek, pinched the monocle he wore over his left eye, smiling with an innocent expression. Klein watched Eamon, who was parasitizing Derek's spiritual body, with a creeping dread, instinctively wanting to chant Mr. Flammel's honorific name. Mr. Flammel, Eamon is causing trouble in the forsaken land of the gods, Klein, suppressing the urge to directly call someone to dismember Eamon, calmed down slightly. Eamon was parasitizing Derek, he had clearly noticed the gray mist. But he couldn't come up, because he hadn't received an invitation. The Tarot Club had ended, and the next one would be at least a week away. If he didn't discover Derek's problem before then, would Eamon enter the Tarot Club the following week, following Sun to the gray mist? Klein felt a chill down his spine. Considering Amon's former title as the Blasphemer, and that he was once a Sequence 1 Angel King, Klein raised his vigilance to the highest level. His gaze towards Amon's clone was as cold as a blade, preparing to somehow eliminate this being. Mr. Flammel's traces exist in Silver City, which means Amon's existence can be erased from a realistic perspective. As long as Mr. Flammel was informed that Eamon was causing trouble in Silver City, this matter would quickly end. Even if he couldn't easily interfere with Silver City through this mysterious space above the gray mist, Mr. Flammel would be able to eliminate Eamon. After he had calmed down slightly, Amon's body floated up from Derek, whom he had parasitized, moving closer to the Crimson Star, and seemingly closer to the mysterious space above the gray mist. Before Klein could make any move, Amon's slightly smiling voice rang out. "Do you really trust that fellow, Nicholas Flammel? Do you truly believe that Flammel is considering your well-being? That he doesn't know your secrets and genuinely wants you to live?" Klein's expression, which had been slightly anxious and uneasy upon seeing Eamon here, froze for a moment, then darkened. The blasphemer, once the strongest liar, his words held no credibility. "Think about that poem. Do you still remember the content of that poem?" Amon's smile widened even further. He no longer cared whether the fool reacted or not. He had never done this simply because he wanted to ascend to the Source Castle. 397 Father, I have a commission. That poem. Klein frowned. As a Sequence 6, his spiritual intuition reminded him of the prophetic-like verses Leonard had once written for him. But, don't believe a single word of a deceiver. Mr. Flammel's words echoed in his ears. Klein held his breath, merged into the Black Emperor card, and stood in the mysterious space above the gray mist. Through his paper figurine substitute, he leveraged the power of this mysterious space to eliminate the Eamon clone hidden on Derek. That poem. He exhaled, his brows furrowed in thought. Backland. Inside the manor where Prince Azik Augustus resided. The mayor of Tingen City, Yhc, observed with interest this sufficiently vast land, no longer dominated by darkness, storms, and the crimson moon. Compared to the superficial prosperity and flourishing of Tingen City, the people, events, and objects in this city were more aligned with the history of human civilization in Yhc's fragmented memories. "His Royal Highness is waiting for you," Edzak's butler respectfully said to the mayor of Tingen City. As one of the few city mayors within the Loen kingdom with a high degree of autonomy, unaffected by the church or the royal family, Mayor Yhc of Tingen City, whether in terms of overt power or covert abilities, was enough to command the high regard of a prince who currently had no claim to the throne. Yhc smiled gently at the butler. Led by him, he met His Royal Highness, who had returned from a hunting ground in the suburbs. Prince Azik Augustus had a round face and a pair of narrow eyes. Unlike his father, he was not at all serious, instead, he always wore a smile, young and vibrant. Lively children, especially in the eyes of the elderly, always carried a special significance. "I didn't know of your visit, and failed to meet you at the gate. I, too, had a sudden whim." If there's any presumption, it should be my fault. Yhc chuckled, chatting idly with the third prince while carefully observing the stars on his body. A qualified astrologer can not only observe the direction of fate through the stars in the night sky but also understand a person and obtain correct divination results through the star bound to those who reveal their true selves before him. William I had already entrusted all of Azik Augustus's future to Tingen City. For Tang, the necessary arrangements could not be omitted, and in the required planning, Azik could not be allowed to arbitrarily possess his own human will. At critical moments, this prince would simply have to die. Therefore, interference and manipulation were indispensable. But I didn't see any signs of the witch. Did that witch not come to find Azik Augustus? The lack of intersecting fates surprised Yhc. While conversing with Azik Augustus, Yhc's gaze swept across a nearby window, seeing the glass, or more precisely, the world behind the mirror. The world behind the mirror is a collection of countless spaces and doors. For high-ranking individuals of the student sequence, they can also traverse the layers of the mirror world without external assistance, moving through it just like high-ranking witches. There are no traces of the witch either. This discovery surprised Yhc, who had some understanding of the current situation. Not long after, he excused himself and left Prince Edzak's manor. As the mayor of Tingen City, his status in Backland, while not allowing him to walk sideways, meant that most nobles and officials treated him with utmost respect. Those astute individuals who understood the forces behind Tingen City, although they used their cleverness in the wrong place, benefited greatly from it. Let's go back. After speaking to the coachman, who was a marionette, Yhc rubbed his temples and closed his eyes to rest. The carriage traveled on the road without incident. Upon returning to his residence in Queens, which was essentially entirely occupied by marionettes, Yhc saw Tang in the hall, fiddling with a die. What did you see? Seeing Yhc return, Tang put the die into his system space, stood up, and brushed off non-existent dust from his pants. That child doesn't seem to know about the witch. The witch church's forces in Backland have all been dealt with by Brooks. It's a very normal development for Trischik not to rashly contact Azik when there are no hostages held by the royal family. As for the logic behind it, he wasn't quite clear. It couldn't possibly be homesickness, could it? It seems you already have a plan. Yhc said. Tang let out an "ah," and replied with a smile, "Compared to that, Mr. Dorr, how do you feel now?" Yhc tilted his head slightly, carefully recalling his sensations, and slowly said, "For me, being able to leave that place, even for just a minute, is a luxury." Tang nodded, then it seems further refinement is needed. After all, allowing a fragmented spirit to possess a marionette was a grafting technique Tang was attempting for the first time, requiring experience and time for gradual exploration. Operating in the North Continent under Yhc's identity, at some point in the future, becoming the advancement ritual for Mr. Dorr, and using this error to advance to Sequence 0, I wonder what the fallen Mother Goddess will do then. After all, Mr. Dorr's true body is currently being jointly controlled by the Black Knight Goddess, the Lord of Storms, and him. In fact, it's becoming more and more out of control. The shouts are becoming more frequent and more malicious, sending shivers down one's spine. Tang looked up, through the ceiling above, and squinted at the bright, sunny sky. In his vision, he clearly saw the crimson moon hanging in the sky at this moment. That foul, degenerate aura, even through the barrier, he could feel it. After all, I am now the master of Source Castle. With the spirit world and reality completely overlapping, it's quite normal to perceive the fallen Mother Goddess, who symbolizes a reality pillar. His eyeballs moved, and Tang's gaze swept down to his feet again. That night, under the crimson moon. South Bridge District, Rose Street, Harvest Church. When Tang walked in, the tall Bishop Utravsky was wiping a candlestick. Seeing the newcomer, Bishop Utravsky stopped his actions, stood up, and performed a normal clerical courtesy of the Earth Mother Church towards Tang. "Father, I have a commission." Tang walked to the Earth Mother's divine radiance and said to Bishop Utravsky. Very well, the benevolent mother always enthusiastically helps her lost children. Lilith is terrifying indeed. Tang's mouth twitched slightly, then he quickly stated his purpose. As a favored one of the Earth Mother Church, I hope you will join a secret gathering. This is also the Mother's will, for you to join as her agent. 398 choices. After giving away the Moon card, Tang stayed in the small chapel of the Earth Mother Church for a while. That vampire. He reportedly saw indescribable, inaudible, and taboo things, and fled to me, Bishop Utorovsky said slowly. Tang thought for a moment, then nodded. Right, it seemed there was such an incident. Earlier, the marionettes in Backland rioted, and Emlyn White happened to encounter them. It's a miracle he didn't go mad. He muttered. Bishop Utorovsky thought for a moment, then said very sincerely, he is a believer of the Mother, and the Mother will grant him protection. These fanatics. Tang didn't argue with the Fursak half-giant, who seemed to have muscles for brains. He casually took out the integral Beander characteristics from his system space and placed them on the church table, then said to Bishop Utorovsky. This is the reward for the commission. After the God of War was turned into a marionette, the fanatics of the Church of the God of War would naturally be developed into marionettes. This way, as long as some observer Beander abilities were bestowed, he could still gain varying numbers of saint-level and angel-level Beander characteristics, while maintaining the high-level combat power of the Church of the God of War. Bishop Utorovsky looked at the several Beander characteristics from Sequence 5 to Sequence 3 that Tang had taken out, which had been crushed and sealed in advance. There was no greed or shock in his eyes. It was as if he had already expected it, or perhaps he had little interest in them, calmly accepting the conditions Tang had proposed. This way, the Earth Mother Church has also joined. Leaving the Earth Mother Church's chapel, Tang sat on a park bench, wondering if there was anything else he hadn't done. All the fanatics and blessed ones who believe in the Earth Mother in Fenaport have been subjected to corresponding error and distortion by Nicola. The influence of the fallen Mother Goddess and the Brood Mother cannot bypass the authority of error to control those blessed ones whose influence is not deep. Since the Second Epoch, as the barrier gradually weakened, the pollution from the starry sky became increasingly intense. The initial will awakened in the Beander characteristics of Beyonders of the Planter and Moon sequences, which is the will of the fallen Mother Goddess or the Brood Mother, began to gradually strengthen. Many times, the voices of gods, heard by high sequence Beyonders of these two sequences were mostly not from the Earth Mother Lilith, but from the peak of these two sequences, from the filthy Brood Mother and the fallen Mother Goddess, whose influence was gradually strengthening as the barrier weakened. The blessed ones of the Earth Mother Church therefore always heard erroneous evil divine revelations, and once they succumbed to the influence of these erroneous divine revelations, they would not be far from returning to the embrace of the Mother. Looking at the night sky above, the black velvet curtain dotted with stars beneath the red moon, Tang was silent for a long time, then his figure disappeared, returning to the mists of history. Kappan was dealt with smoothly. The appearance of rogue Black Emperor drew attention to this strange organization, which seemed to hold certain secrets. I met a strange patient named Will Osepton. Klein was normal, exchanging information about the day with Tang. According to the client, he's a child who brings bad luck. Well, huh? Tang's voice stretched a little. He thoughtfully held a coin, tossed it up, glanced at it, then smiled and said to Klein, there should be a bit of a problem, but it's not a big one. You go check it out. I still have some things to deal with. Klein asked, is it something from Miskatonic? Tang nodded. Acherly is tracking the true creator's divine son. There aren't too many high-sequence Beyonders in Backland, so some things also need me, the marionettist, to handle them. He blinked and said, this is also a way to accumulate contributions. Perhaps I'll be ready to advance to Sequence 4 very soon. Klein could also see that Miskatonic valued Tang greatly. At first, he seemed to be just a faceless, but he quickly advanced to marionettist, and now, perhaps in the near future, he would be ready to advance to trickster. All right. Klein nodded, pressed down on his semi-tall black silk top hat, and turned to leave. Tang watched Klein leave, silently thinking. I've sent your advancement ritual to you. However, whatever strange changes the fate sequence advancement ritual undergoes, it had nothing to do with him. After all, Ouroboros had a true creator there, plus Adam, who would likely interfere. Forsaken land of the gods, Silver City. The time worm formed by the resolved Amon's avatar was preserved by Derek. He was still apprehensive, constantly thanking Mr. Fool in his heart, which allowed his heart to calm down from the suffocating feeling of almost bursting out of his chest. This is a parasite. The Silver City, whose culture had not been fault and whose knowledge had been intentionally supplemented, did not know much about the error sequence, but certainly not little. And Parasite, coincidentally, was within his scope of knowledge. In fact, there was also a parasite among the six-person council. The Beander belonging to Chief Colin Iliad, hidden in the darkness, watched Derek finish his prayer and begin to rest, frowning, but merely continued to monitor without any other movements. He could not see Amon, nor could he peek into the mystic space above the gray mist. This was a good thing for him, for ignorance sometimes meant safety. Nicola sat on the roof of Derek's house, looking at the pitch-black sky, occasionally lit by streaks of lightning. He slightly adjusted his black silk top hat, then cast his gaze on a shadow not far away. Luvia went to explore that obviously problematic temple. The true creator needs new believers to help him escape his predicament as soon as possible and gain an advantage in the struggle with Adam. So, what would the true creator do? Miskatonic had not given a clear response on who should lead the revival of the ancient sun god. So, would he place his chips on Derek Berg, who had, the fool, behind him? The birth of the Lord of the Mysteries is an inevitable outcome, and this process will infinitely approach the parallel line we predicted as fate continues to evolve. Nicola played with the Mother card in his hand, smiling playfully. The closer to the apocalypse, the smaller the room for manipulation. What will the true creator choose? It's really a bit exciting. This isn't good. It's better to do less of the troublemaker stuff. Otherwise, he'd turn into Amon. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.